I'd just like to ask first, have we got any apologies for absence?
No, there's no apologies received tonight, Councillor.
Brilliant. The second item on here is the minutes. Have we got any? Is there any alterations to the minutes that anyone wants to make?
I've
No,
got
we're all
something
good, yeah?
that's arising.
Brilliant. So is it okay if we approve the minutes? Okay, yeah, go for it. I didn't see your hand. that was all.
Yeah, oh, sorry. I'll put my hand up now. Sorry.
No, you're okay now. I can only see the top of your head, Lynn, for some reason.
I know, it's because of where I'm sitting.
Yeah,
And I
I know
can't.
you. I've been banished to the bedroom again.
Okay, I'll have a go at trying to prop it up to something different by once
That's
I've
better.
asked.
That's perfect.
Yeah, I'm gonna so on page 13 of the minutes, it talks about the resident survey for the rents, and I asked how many people had actually completed it, and Ryan was going to send it to me, and I haven't had it. So it says there, like, Councillor Orwell asked that the data with the number of people who completed the questionnaire be sent, and I haven't had that, Ryan. Could you do it for me, please, so I know how many people filled it in?
Yeah, of course. I'll get those across to you. I thought they'd been passed to you by a colleague, so I'll make that happen.
All right then. Thanks, Ryan.
No problem.
And we've got Councillor Redsill.
Thanks, Chair. Just to say on page 5 of the minutes, when it mentioned that I said we should perhaps go out to ask businesses if they want to put, you know, something on their gates. It's not actually the footfall that goes past the gates. It's the advertisement that goes out to say we've helped. You know, so I think we could have looked at that a little bit better and not just dismiss it. You know, that's it. We're not going to do anything. I think we've still got to look to businesses to help. You know, because it will go out on something. We can always put it out on comms that, you know, that some business has helped with those gates, because you're not going to get a footfall part. Well, you are to a certain extent. I just didn't want it dismissed out of context. You know, it's still worth a look at.
Yeah, I mean, I've always thought that corporate sponsorship is something that we don't look at enough.
No, we don't.
I know some people find it a bit tacky, but it is something that I think, I think we should look at it a bit more. But no, is there anything else apart from that from anyone?
No.
And if so, are we okay to approve?
Approve.
Excellent. Shall we move on to, I've not received any urgent items of business tonight. And have we got any, I've got a little visitor coming into the room again. Have we got any declarations of interest?
No.
No?
No.
Good. So shall we go to, are you hearing me okay? Is my feed okay? Because I'm getting a little bit of,
Yeah.
am I okay? Yeah, I'm just getting a few. Yeah, I was getting a few issues with Lynn and Joy for a minute there. Item 5. Who's going to present this report for us?
Michelle's here.
Good evening, colleagues. Thank you very much for inviting us. I'm just going to do an opening couple of minutes and I'm going to hand over to one of my colleagues, Tiffany Bright. We've brought to you tonight the Head Start Housing report. It will look at how we've worked in close partnership with our housing colleagues and the wider adult social care colleagues to provide housing for our care leavers. But I think the interesting thing for us colleagues is it's not just about housing. We recognise that we want our young people to have, you know, nice places to live, but it's about that wraparound support. It's around the support that Inspire brings to this, so that the young person can access additional support that enables them to access education, employment or training. I'll hand over to Tiffany in a minute. I think the local authority have been incredibly supportive around this programme. They've invested over £1 million. Tiffany will talk to you a little bit about that. We've also got a couple of videos, colleagues, that I'd like to send afterwards as a link, because I think it will really give you the flavour of the work that's being undertaken, and you'll actually be hearing about it from young people. So after committee's met, we'll make sure we send the links out and you can have a look at what some of our young people are saying around Head Start housing. Tiffany, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you, Michelle. And so Head Start Housing was formally launched in December 2018, following a pilot in 2016 where we learned a lot of lessons. Head Start manages a portfolio of accommodation exclusively for Thurrock care leavers. And so properties range from single self-contained units to house shares of up to 5 bedrooms. And in all, Thurrock care leavers can access in excess of 100 beds, and 42 of these 100 have additional support provided to them. So anything from 3 hours per week to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The Head Start strategy aims to return all care leavers to Thurrock by December 2023, so as they can be better supported by their PA, but also by all of the partners and offers and services that are available in Thurrock, and we've a huge number of them. We work very closely with the economic development team, and the range of different types of employment opportunities that are available for all residents are second to none. So you're invited this evening to scrutinise the cross-directorate working to improve the quality of services to care leavers regarding their housing options, to support and promote the innovative ways, but to note and comment on the work that is undertaken by Head Start. So in December 2018, at the outset of the launch, Housing made a commitment to provide 6 beds per annum over the next 5 years for exclusive use by care leavers, and also making use of a fair number of right to buy receipts. And so, as Michelle said, £1 million worth of transformation funding has been used alongside of £300,000 of right to buy receipts to purchase an aspirational 12 extra beds in Thurrock. And I'm really pleased to say that we completed yesterday on the 3rd property, and the aspirational number of 12 beds has been achieved. The first property has 5 young men living in it, and that's actually one of the films that Wendy will circulate the link to watch later. So over the past 12 months, we've been busy. 9 properties have been handed back to the estate agent or to the landlord, and 6 of those were out of borough beds. 19 beds in borough have been procured, and now each property provides essential furnishings. The rent for us covers the utility bills, the water rates, Wi-Fi, cleaning tools, window blinds and light shades. And this is designed to reduce the care leavers outlay from their setting up home grant, but also gives a feeling of comfort and care as they move in, and the building, the room looks like a home. And this is so as they can settle in quicker and create the headspace they need to access services into education, employment or training. We've got a really robust process for ensuring that care leavers that can access housing benefit, that's made as a direct payment to Head Start, and has generated almost 160,000. This was written a month ago, this report. £160,000 so far in this financial year. And this sounds great, but it helps to offset the additional expenditure for the high level needs supported accommodation that we've had to buy during lockdown. Ordinarily, we will have an average of 8 care leavers in high level needs accommodation, but during the first lockdown, we rose to 21 young people. And when I wrote this, we had 14 high level needs care leavers. And actually now, a month later, we now have 17. Care leavers are quite severely affected by the pandemic, as many young people are. So the film, there were 2 films. There's a short film of about 2.5 minutes that gives you a tour of the first property procured by housing using the transformation funding and the right to buy receipts. The second film is much longer. It documents 8 young people giving us a tour of their home and talking to them about why the service they receive from Head Start. And so whilst the strategy commits to bringing all care leavers back into borough by December 23, there will always be a small contingent that due to lifestyle choices really cannot. And so leaves me just to say one more thing, and that is we're trialing another new approach recently, and that's a local partner wants to provide care leavers with accommodation, but also to provide them with an apprenticeship in health and social care. If that's successful and at the point they're taken onto the books, they want to take over a direct rental payment to them that can be their forever home. So I'll draw to a close there and ask if colleagues have any questions.
Thank you very, very much for that report. I know that I've expressed my joy at this report and this programme. It's a wonderful programme. I've seen too many care leavers placed into housing that is only ever going to, you know, continue the cycle that they've been in. This is a brilliant project. I wish that care leavers had projects like this in every single council, and the attaching employment to it and apprenticeships is absolutely wonderful. It's the same with, and we should, if only we could do the same on this scale with all offenders as well as care leavers as well. We could really make a massive difference to some of the most vulnerable people that we have in this country. So. Wonderful project. I know that I can imagine that, you know, there's going to be a lot of enthusiasm for it from the other councillors here. So first of all, I'll pass on to Councillor Redsew, who's got a hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Michelle, for your first part. Yeah, I agree with you, Luke. I mean, it's as long as they are. You've answered one of my questions, Tiffany, was how long do they get to stay in the property? I think you could just clarify that a bit more, and how much do we actually check on them to make sure they're all right, make sure they're not doing something they shouldn't be. Also, that film you could have shown, is there no way you could have shown that to us tonight? Because it's all right for us to watch it on our own, but then we can't ask any questions of it. So I think it's, you know, it's fine us watching it from home, but then we've got not till June or July whether we can ask any questions of it. So I just wonder why it couldn't be done tonight. That's all really. If you've wrote them down, Tiffany, or thank you.
So thank you. So the average length of stay is 8 months. It can be much longer when the tenant or the care leaver has no recourse to public funds. And so what we have is a policy of move on when the young person is ready, but also move back if when they've moved on into a different type of accommodation as part of a progression, it's been too much. There can be lots of triggers for care leavers, and we're really conscious that if that happens, once they've moved into social housing, the safety net is a little less. And so move on, move back, and the average length of stay about 8 months, but only ever when they're ready. Your next question is how much do we check on them? So I would say that officers ordinarily would call into premises about once a month. We've got about 31 properties now. But during COVID, we had to do this differently. And so Head Start officers would telephone tenants every 4 days with a script and with a log to understand each tenant's understanding of the changing guidelines, if they had access to education, employment or training, if they had sufficient food, data, credit on their mobile, and if they reported symptoms, even if they were not confirmed, those 4-day contacts were increased to every day until the symptoms had ceased or until they had their test and they felt supported. Does that answer your question, Councillor Redsell?
It's just about, through you, Chair, just about, could that film not have been shown to us tonight?
I'll take that one, Tiffany.
Thanks, Michelle.
No, I'm happy to take that one. It's a very long film. It's 25 minutes. It goes into great detail with individual young people, so it talks you through. What I will give you is a little tiny snippet. So when we did that, one of the things that came out quite clearly from young people was access to Wi-Fi. So what they were saying was, in some of the properties that they were in, there was some concern around Wi-Fi. I think when you look at the 2 minutes snippet of where we've got our new house, you'll see that all of that property has now got access to Wi-Fi. So it's really about listening, Councillor Redsill, to what our young people are saying, and then coming back with ways in which we can address that. So I think, as I said, we would have brought it to committee tonight. It is 25 minutes. It would have taken an awful lot of your time this evening, but it really will give you a picture and a flavour of the work that's going on with our young people, because I think, as Councillor Spillman said, it isn't just about having somewhere to live, is it? It's about having somewhere to live with all of that wraparound service that enables young people to access education, employment or training. We're incredibly excited about this health and social care potential apprenticeship opportunity, because again, all of these creative ways of actually supporting our young people in an area, colleagues, that we know actually there are going to be job opportunities, because it is about making sure that we're linking them to the appropriate opportunities. I really hope, colleagues, you enjoy the film. Please give us some feedback, by email. You know my email address, Councillor Redsell. Happy for that. You'll know Tiffany's. So give us some feedback, and you can sort of give us your feedback about the video. I really hope you enjoy it, because it was a lovely thing to do.
Lovely, thank you. Chair, could I just ask Tiffany one more question?
Yeah,
please?
of course, Joy.
You've got it in there's some with jobs and some without jobs. How much roughly do they have to help to pay? Although there'll be benefits coming through, are they made to pay a little bit so they know that when they move on, they're going to have to sort of pay out wherever they're going to go? Is it blocked that way? Thank you.
Yes, we do. So we've developed what we think is an equitable rental scheme, and that is because for the most part these are shared accommodations, and so we had to find a way that would be fair for some to be contributing and others to have everything covered. And so we are trialing 10% of their weekly income after the young person has successfully completed their probationary period. So what we find is care leavers can secure employment, but to actually get through a probationary period is another matter as well. So we wait until they're stable, we stay in close contact, and then we enter into that arrangement with them.
Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Worrell.
You're muted.
Sorry. All right, I'm out. First of all, thank you for bringing this report to us, and it's always nice to have a really positive report because of care leavers. You know, they've been dealt a rough hand basically. You know, and we know that in the past it's been from care to nobody cares, and that's not the way here in Thurrock, and it's really nice to see that, you know, that we've taken this proactive approach to making sure that they do have settled accommodation. But I just wondered what the pressure was like on, have we got enough accommodation for the amount of people that need it, and or is it something that we need to grow? And my second question is, with universities closed at the moment, and we know that there is care leavers that go off to university, are any of those in the accommodation? You know, is it something that they can access rather than going back into foster care?
Thank you, Councillor Worrell. We have at the moment an average occupancy rate of about 84%. So it gives us very little wriggle room when we take into account the risks that some of the young people bring, and then the dynamic between the other already settled young people in that accommodation. So we manage it really, really carefully. And colleagues have likened it to a really careful choreography. It can only happen in close working partnership with aftercare, that they help and support us to relocate young people when we need them to. So we do need to grow the portfolio because we know the data that's coming, and so working really closely with finance that we make sufficient provision in the next budget to be able to do that. And yes, we were very, very proactive to establish which care leavers are at university, and we set rooms aside for them so as they could feel stable and secure within borough. As it turned out, none of those rooms were used, but that was a targeted piece of work to identify who they are and where would be appropriate for them for as long as they needed.
Okay, thank you. Could I just come back with another question? So with a blue sky, you know, and if you could have everything that you wanted, how many of these accommodation rooms do we need for us to be able to, you know, adequately look after those young people accessing these homes?
Oh, that's really, really difficult to answer. I would say that if we had perhaps another 15 more beds, that would be more than adequate.
That's great. Then that's what we need to target at, and that's maybe something that needs to go forward out of tonight. Is, you know, we build that in. We're building homes. You know, there's no reason why we can't make sure that our we build happy homes for older people. We need to be building homes for young people. I regularly get young people that are like coming out of, they can't, you know, they come onto our programs and they just turn up one day with bags, you know, and say, I can't live there no more, you know. So I just think that we need to do more about young persons' accommodation here in Thurrock, as well as like care leavers. It needs to be. So I think that it's something that surely we must be able to build that in. 1,000 homes, we need to be able to build in 15 more rooms for these young people. That's all my questions, but thank you. Great report and great work. Thank you. Michelle, please pass on my thanks to your team. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Wall. Councillor Abbas.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, officers, for the report. This is really very positive report, you know, and thank you for doing all this wonderful work. So my question is not really a question, it's just a clarification. On first page of your report, you have mentioned you are committed to bring all care leavers back to Thurrock by December 2023. But on page 20, at 2.3.3, you have mentioned this is not achievable. Can you please shed more light on this?
Yes, of course. So the aspiration is to bring all Thurrock care leavers that can be brought back to borough by the end of December 2023. Now, what that means is, in practical terms, that we are working really closely with children's social care, and so the practitioners, the social workers and the independent reviewing officers. So as they hear that we cannot continually support young people out of borough when they turn 18 and they begin the work as they're turning 16, so as it's not another horrible shock upon an important birthday, but we have a number of young people that have been involved in crime, and quite serious crime, and will then go to prison for that, or are waiting to go to court. And there are orders in place, either placed by a judge or by probation, that means they have to stay away from the borough. They committed crimes, or they have had negative influences. And so it is a handful of young people, but the aspiration is to return as many as possible, but by being sensitive and never by placing that young people in danger simply because a strategy requires it. Does that answer your question, Councillor Abbas?
Yeah, thank you so much. Just one brief more question, Chair, if you allow me. You have just mentioned some care leavers, they have no recourse to public funds. So how are they being supported now? And once they leave these care, so what support do we offer them?
Sure. So for the tenants, the care leavers that are no recourse to public funds, the local authority covers the cost of their rent. They also receive a personal allowance that is the equivalent of universal credit, and they are supported until the day before their 26th birthday. And so the aftercare team have very specific targeted support to provide the tenants or the care leavers that are no recourse to public funds, with applications to the Home Office for asylum and appeal processes. And if they are granted asylum, that biometrics, ID, and everything else enables independence from us.
Thank you.
Did you want to follow that up at all?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Do we have any other councillors who want to speak? Brilliant. I'd just like to again say thanks for this report. Thanks for the work you're doing. It's like I said in the pre-min, it's not rocket science, is it? This sort of stuff, you know, and it's just a shame that that these sort of services aren't more widespread around the country. I mean, the outcomes for care leavers are, you know, they're appalling, you know, shocking, the figures. And I'm really pleased to see Thurrock Council taking such a proactive stance. So thanks very much for that. I don't know if you wanted to sum up at all, if you had any more comments from the presenting officer, or are you okay with us to move on?
No, sorry, Councillor, can I just come in just for 2 minutes, just to
Yeah, of course you can, yeah.
sum up? I mean, first of all, thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time to receive the report this evening. And it's interesting because we started our journey and we had some real challenges, as you'd expect with any new initiative. And I think what's so pleasing for me is that the council stuck with it. They said, you know what, there's been some challenges, we need to work through those. And I have to say, and I reiterate this, whoever I'm speaking to this, we could not do this if it wasn't for our colleagues in housing. we couldn't do this if it wasn't for our colleagues in sort of adult and children's social care. It really is that joined up approach across the whole of the council that enables us to support these young people in the way we've supported them as their corporate parents. So, you know, as I said, I think it really does need to be recognised that the partnership working across the whole of the council on this one. So thank you. Thank you for allowing me to say that, Councillor Spillman.
No, it's exactly true. I mean, I remember making a typically flippant comment when I was dealing with social care and housing in the same room and introducing them to each other when they walked in the room. I was being facetious. So it's really good to see, you know, this joined up working, because it has been in other scenarios. It has been a frustration where perhaps housing and social care generally, not just children's social care, adults as well, perhaps don't work as closely as they could do on occasion. And this just shows you the results that you can get when those two departments do work closely together. So thank you very much. Thank you for providing such a fantastic first report to this committee and this evening. And if you would like to stay for the rest of the meeting, those who are only presenting this report, then please feel free to. But if you would like to spend some time with your families, equally, please feel free to do that as well. Okay.
Councillor, I'm really sorry. Oh, you can't see me, and I haven't got a hand on my tablet.
Well, we
I've been
can't.
waving at you. I just wondered if I could ask a quick question when you're ready, please.
Of course you can.
Thank you. Go ahead now.
Yeah, go for it.
Right, the care leave, they're in the homes, and you said when they reach the age of 26, or some, then when they reach the age of 20, what happens to them then? I mean, say some of them are obviously ready to be left on their own, but I would say there's some that aren't. So, you know, they're in a blanket and then they're not really ready. Where do they go then? Are they left into the community, just the community care like everybody else, and they have to go and find it, or is there still someone there helping them on their way?
Thank you. That's a really good point as well. So the legislation says that no support is required, but again, Thurrock Council provides it. So I know of instances where care leavers have they've been 26 or 27 and they've asked for a bit more support and they've got it. And so the work that the aftercare team does is very targeted. They are very aware of the significant milestones and the birthdays that the young person is reaching, and so it's a very tailored approach, and they're never just cast out to the community. So they're either supported into a private rental or supported into an adult social care setting, or supported into or back to perhaps return to their home country. So does that answer it for you?
Yes.
Thank you. And with your permission, Councillor Spillman, I'll leave now. Thank you.
Really
Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. So we've just said,
Thank you.
oh, someone's got me on. There we go. I can hear myself properly now. The going through the recommendations is just to note that report. We've gone through the other points, so we know that we're all good and all happy with that. Yeah. Brilliant. So from that uplifting start, let's go to something completely opposite and quite miserable. Let's go to the leaseholders satisfaction survey, please. And who's going to be presenting that report?
I'll be me, Chair. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So this report sets out the results of the leaseholder satisfaction survey, which took place alongside the tenant satisfaction survey during the summer of 2020. And it also sets out a summary of the actions which have been identified so far from the results of the survey. So the survey questions were very similar to the tenant survey, with some slight differences which made the survey relevant to leaseholders. And 216 leaseholders responded to the survey, which represented a response rate of 25%, which is a good response rate. One thing to note, though, is that the data collected shows that 21% of the leaseholders who responded to the survey are non-resident leaseholders, which can have an impact on measures like neighbourhood, communal repairs and maintenance, estate services, antisocial behaviour and value for money, as the respondent lives elsewhere and will have a different perception as a result to those who are resident. So moving on to the results part of the report. So the housing and services section of the survey, the results from this section show mixed views from leaseholders on the services housing provides, some of which contrast significantly with the results from the tenant survey. The service priorities section, leaseholders clearly indicated value for money for service charges and communal repairs as top priorities, and by a considerable margin. The neighbourhood issues part of the survey, similar neighbourhood issues were reported by leaseholders compared with the tenants. The top three reported by leaseholders were car parking, drugs and litter. They were the most prevalent. The neighbourhood and estate services part of the survey, leaseholders have indicated mixed views with high levels of satisfaction with grounds maintenance and moderate to low levels of satisfaction with all other measures. The ASB and contact communications part of the survey, there were low levels of satisfaction with ASB outcomes and low levels of satisfaction with contact outcomes too. And the views on Thurrock housing section of the survey, there were moderate and low levels of satisfaction with all measures, but large proportions of leaseholders giving the neutral rating of neither satisfied nor dissatisfied. So in terms of the action plan, much like the tenant survey, a meeting's been held to consider the results and the initial analysis of the data, which has identified some initial actions to address some of the dissatisfaction expressed by leaseholders. But many of the actions do cut across both tenants and leaseholders. So this is a process which is fluid and will be broadened over the coming months based on the results of further data analytics. But one particular action which will be absolutely key is the delivery of focus groups, which is something that a number of officers in the service are now trained to deliver. What that will do is will allow us to better understand the precise reasons for dissatisfaction with key measures, as we received a very small amount of qualitative feedback from the survey. However, what the survey does provide is an insight into how leaseholders view certain elements of the service offer, as well as what leaseholders' priorities are. And that will give us a steer on what the focus group should focus on to obtain the best possible intelligence to drive operational improvements in service delivery. So thank you, Chair, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I mean, from the obviously the question we've got to find out is, you know, how do we make leaseholders feel as though they're getting value for money? Because it's quite clear that they're not even close to thinking they get value for money at the moment. And you only have to go to, I mean, as a lot of, we've got some veteran councillors here that have knocked on every single sort of communal, you know, block of flats in this borough. You know, aesthetically they're awful, yeah. And I know it's not just Thurrock, but they're appalling. You know, paint peeling off walls, filthy floors, you know, just bits falling off. Yeah, it's not the same experience that you would get if you lived in a private block of flats. You know, even at the lower end of the market, the lower end of the private market in terms of communal areas is a lot better than what we're delivering across the board to our tenants, many of whom and to our leaseholders. So from that perspective, I wouldn't feel as though I was getting great value for money if I was paying a service charge. And I just, you know, and I know people will say, you know, I've had this conversation with directors before who say, you know, well, there's more important issues facing, you know, repair wise than the aesthetics of these buildings. And, you know, but I just think we should be doing more to make these buildings and, you know, nicer places to live, you know, more uplifting places to live. Because if you walk into a building and there's paint peeling off the walls and there's bits hanging off the walls and it looks like it's not been touched in the last 25 years, you know, you're creating an environment and an ethos within that whole building where people aren't going to have pride in where they live. And I do think it's something that we do need to address. That's my point, which you can come to. And I can see Councillor Baker has got his hand up. And I know that we've mentioned focus groups. I know we spoke about that in the pre-meeting, which you might want to talk about, because we really do need to drill down into these responses and find out exactly what they would need to make sure that they feel as though they're getting value for money, so that we can figure out a plan to deliver on those needs. So I don't know if you want to quickly respond to that, Chris. Actually, if you can respond to that, and then I'll go to Councillor Baker.
Yeah, so absolutely, and yeah, I totally agree with your point on focus groups. To be honest with you, Chair, I think from the data we collected from this survey, it's quantitative data. So what that means is we've kind of collected data on whether someone is satisfied on the response scale, but we haven't actually collected a lot of free text feedback, which will give us the information in terms of what the issue actually is, why that leaseholder feels they aren't getting value for money from their service charges, or they're dissatisfied with the appearance of their neighbourhood, or something like that. And that is why we're looking to deliver focus groups as soon as we practically can. What that will do is to help us to understand the exact reasons behind leaseholders' dissatisfaction, and then we can use that intelligence in order to drive service improvements across the service. So I think that's the key part of this, the delivery of focus groups, and getting into those reasons rather than just quantitative data.
Some of these, there's also scope as well to, you know, some of this like more simpler. We could even run some apprenticeship schemes, you know, like for training people to do, you know, painting and decorating, and you know, certain skills, and using our, you know, there's so many different ways that you can approach this, where you can, you know, wrap it up with training to make some of these places, you know, nicer places to walk into and nicer places to walk out of when you open your front door. So yeah, I would definitely like to see, you know, the fruit of these focus groups and find out what these people need, and let's get it for them, you know, within reason. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, perhaps like the rest of you, I've received so many complaints with paint peeling off the walls, damp and mold galore, big time with that. It's terrible. Everywhere I go, right, when I can get out there because of lockdown, Broxburn Drive is dreadful. Cam Green's dreadful. Brock Green's dreadful. I could go on forever, right? So it's clear that a lot of these guys, these complaints coming in, the people there obviously are not clicking into it. Otherwise, you would have got an awful lot more complaints than that. I'm pretty sure, Chris. Just letting you all know what you're saying, Luke. I echo the same views as you. Thank you.
Do you want to respond to that, Chris?
So I'd just say I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I think the focus groups are the key to this, Councillor Baker, and that's where we will get all of the intelligence that we need to understand exactly why our leaseholders are dissatisfied.
Councillor Bass.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Chris, for your report. You know, we can see whatever we can say, like, you know, whatever module we are using to collect these data, you know, we can say, okay, you know, these are technicalities, but we can clearly see, you know, from these reports, people are not happy, you know, from service charges, they are not happy from overall service, you know, what they are receiving from the council. Even, you know, 47%, 50%, 67%, they are dissatisfied. So, and this is also evident, you know, whenever we go to block of flats, we can see these communal areas, we can see those areas. So what kind of intelligence are you looking to get or improve these services? Because you have said you are just like, you know, these are just metal to collect some data, but these are not the real reflection. So what kind of real reflection do you need from this, and how we can improve? Because we can see even from last meeting, you know, you have proposed like, you know, increase in service charges. So how can we justify these increases when we can see such a high level of dissatisfied tenants?
So the intelligence that we're looking to gain from delivering focus groups, particularly with our leaseholders, is the actual reasoning behind the scores. So we know where our leaseholders are dissatisfied with particular areas and particular services and particular things. We know that they're dissatisfied with that. But we don't know what we don't know are the exact reasons why. So that kind of qualitative reasoning behind those kind of binary responses on the survey form. So that's the kind of that's what we're going to use to kind of steer us in terms of what we're going to focus on when we deliver these focus groups. But the intelligence that we're actually looking for is that precise reasoning behind what leaseholders are actually dissatisfied with that element of the service. That answers your question, Councillor Abbas.
I can see Ian's coming as well, actually. I think Ian wants to make a comment.
Not really. So then why are we proposing,
Councillor Abbas, I think Ian wanted to add to that comment for you. Ian?
So just a couple of observations as someone coming into this new with a fresh pair of eyes. My understanding on the service charges, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that actually the charge wasn't adequately covering the cost of the service. And Chair, you made a comparison with the private sector at the start of this item, which I thought was a very good one, in the sense that you generally get a higher level of communal area and a higher level of space where you've got a private sector development. But I suspect that part of the reason for that is the service charge is going to be infinitely higher than our leaseholders are paying, and there's something for me about, do we have enough resources to adequately provide the services to address some of the concerns. My other observation, just looking down the issues, is actually what a lot of these have in common is a level of antisocial behaviour, low-level antisocial behaviour. Whether you look at drug dealing and drug use, whether you look at rubbish and litter, noisy neighbours, disruptive children and teenagers, dog fouling, vandalism, drunken rowdy behaviour, other people damaging property, other crime, racial or other harassment, they're all actually linked to antisocial behaviour. And I wonder, I know in the pre-meet, Chris, you had some quite good ideas about using the intelligence that we've got at postcode level to really drill down and work out where this ASB may be occurring, so that we can better target the ASB resources that we have. And I wonder, just as an observation, whether that may start to help to address some of these issues. But I agree with Chris, what we need to do is get underneath this data. I think both by some further quantitative measures I've just outlined and the qualitative measures in terms of resident engagement, allowing people to tell their stories so that we can come up with a cogent plan.
Councillor Abbas?
Yes, thank you, for these clarifications. But why don't we, when we send out these surveys, why don't we use those kind of, obviously I don't know these technicalities. Why don't we collect the actual data, what we need from them, rather than just sending them a sample surveys and then coming back and saying, look, no, this is not the real data. These are just the samples, and we are looking for some other kind of stuff, to get more data.
So I think we've got the data. I think what Chris is posing is that, and this is the right methodology if you're conducting good research. You want to get the quantitative to understand what the issues are in terms of the categories, and then you want to conduct further engagement in terms of which can be more focused and targeted to understand the reasons why and behind. So I think we've done the first stage of that. And we need to do the second stage. Undertaking qualitative research where you're engaging with people to allow them to tell their stories is obviously a lot more challenging in the COVID environment of lockdown that we have all been working under and operating under in the last 12 months. But I guess that would be my initial response. I know you see Tracy's got a hand up, or maybe Chris, you've got some more details. Obviously, this is my first proper week in the job, so I am very new to this. I'm sure my team can provide you with some more detailed background.
Yeah, Tracy.
Thank you, Chair. Just really sort of bringing back to what Chris was talking about is that we do have a capital programme and we do have a decorations programme, but of course, as Ian has pointed out, when we do that works, it does increase the cost of the service charges for leaseholders. What we're really interested to understand is why there's this difference between leaseholders and our tenants about how they feel about these areas, because we've got a disparity in the data, and that's why the focus groups can help us really understand. Rather than just jump in and assume, we want to make sure we're really understanding what it is that leaseholders feel differently about things, and that's why the focus group and drilling down and speaking directly to people helps us to understand that and get a better answer, along with the other answers you've already raised about making the communal areas look better and investing in them in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I just to jump in before I invite the two other councillors who've got questions. I do agree with both Chris and Ian. I remember having a discussion with another director once who I was telling we need to do more qualitative research in this area, and it was just, well, the numbers say we've improved 3% from last year, so everything must be good. Just talk to people, yeah. You know, we call it's called qualitative research, but let's remember what it is. You know, it's just talking to people and having a proper dialogue with our tenants. So yeah, the more we talk to our tenants and leaseholders, you know, the better. And so you know, I look forward to the report and the information coming back from this more engaging approach with leaseholders, because it's clear from the quantitative data there's a big red flag there that we need to talk to these people. So I really do. I look forward to it. I don't know who have had their hand up first.
Just quickly, just a comment. But obviously this is important. We need to have a dialogue with these, residents. But at the same time, we also need to improve our services. We know when these residents they are dissatisfied. So we also need to focus on our service or delivery. How we can improve these things.
What I will say is that a lot of these reports, as the report said, are actually not the people that live there. It's the people that own the properties who are then renting them out to other people. So it's more complicated than it just being residents' concerns. Apologies. I can't remember who was first, so I'm going to call.
Joy was before me. Joy, go on, off you go.
Go on, Joy.
Thanks, Lynn. I'm probably going to go into one now.
Go for it.
And be a bit blunt, actually. But first of all, Chris, I want to know how many was this survey sent out. That's the first question. Luke is right. If you don't give people pride in where they live, they're not going to bother. In this COVID at the moment, I've got people in my ward who are cleaning areas outside, round garage areas, round the grass. They are taking pride in where they live. It might be because some of us are doing extra things as well, but you've got to give people the want to do things, even in their area. If they don't take pride in where they live, it's a bit like, I'm probably one of those that Luke just said, I've been around a little while and been many, many places, but I think I noticed with the antisocial behaviour while COVID's been on, I've had quite a few complaints where we keep relying on everybody else to give the council diaries of what's going on in a council property. Now, it should be that the council should take on the responsibility of what is happening there. I know they've got to send letters out and everything else. We shouldn't have to rely on people who are taking the antisocial behaviour to keep diaries. They are living there in a good way. You don't expect to have someone put in next to you. We've got an area in my ward, a flatted area, where over the years, 3-4 families have been put in there, and every time we get somebody in there, it's a drug issue. No matter who goes in there, it's a drug issue. All right, we know where it is and we keep it informed. But just on one other thing, Chris, I don't really care for focus groups. I think the council's got to be aware. They know where the problems are. They know where flats are not looked after. They know that they're not in good condition. You don't need a focus group to tell you that. You know, perhaps we've got to go back to the old way of going out and checking these places, because you'll only get it by seeing. And by taking what somebody else has said to you in a survey isn't the way you're going to. We are, at the end of the day, we are the landlord. And if a landlord doesn't keep the property up to scratch, we are at fault. Sorry to put it bluntly, but I do feel like that at the moment. We have got so many properties that are not looked after, and it pulls the area down. Wherever you are, whatever part of the borough we're in, we all know where they are. It just pulls that borough back down to a level that isn't right. So I think we've got to learn. Focus groups probably fine in certain circumstances, but get out there. You know, I hate to say this to officers, but you have to get out there to see what we see as members, because we're out there, we see it, we know it's there, we know what's wrong. And I think Luke had a good point there. You know, to get people involved in where they live is a good thing. Sorry to rant, but that's how I feel. Thanks, Chris.
The good rant. Good rant. You keep them coming. Councillor Worrell.
Thank you. I'm not going to hit you with that big stick, Chris,
Sorry.
because I could say everything that they've all just said. You know, we're all on the same page with this.
Lynn, sorry to interrupt you. Chris hasn't answered me.
Oh, sorry, I thought you was just making a statement.
I didn't hear the question to it.
I didn't think there was
I
a
didn't hear
question
a
in
question. I just heard a rant.
No, I
Chris,
have asked a couple of questions there.
Go on, Chris.
Okay, so to answer your first question, I believe that was how many surveys were sent out. So we included every leaseholder in the survey. So every leaseholder received a copy of the survey. The only leaseholders that did not receive a postal copy of the survey were leaseholders that live abroad and leaseholders who have already responded to our emailed version of the survey. So everyone had an opportunity, who we've got email addresses for, to complete the survey online in the first instance. And those who did not receive complete the survey online, we sent a postal copy out to them first, and then we sent a second postal copy as a reminder as well. So every leaseholder has had ample opportunity to respond to the survey.
How many, Chris? How many did we send out?
How many leaseholders were there, or how many survey forms?
Whatever. You said we only got 216 back. So how many did we send out?
So we've got just under 900 leaseholders, I believe. So that would have been how many we sent out.
I mean, to be fair, that's a good response rate for any survey.
Yeah.
Very good response rate.
Yeah. Yeah, Councillor Worrell.
Thank you. Right, Chris, I'm not going to hit you with that stick, because I think that you've got where we're all coming from on this one. It's just simply not a good enough service, and it mirrors completely, really, how people feel in council houses. So you know where your target areas are. You know that people do not feel like they're getting good value for money. So, you know, there is the way to go forward. But what I wanted to we need to make sure that what is it in service charges that they don't feel they're getting, you know, because we charge them a lot of money. And I know Ian, you know, saying like, oh, but it's not cost recovery. It is. We've just put it up by 3% when inflation was 0.8, you know, so we whacked a fair amount of money again on service charges again this year. And, you know, I'm lucky I don't have to pay service charges, but I'd be pretty damn angry if I did, you know, after where some of these people do get to have to live. But what I was a little bit concerned about was the low satisfaction level of staff being able to deal with inquiries. Have we not got the right level of staff in? Are we carrying vacancies there that people are pressured? You know, I think we need to dig deep there and find out why it is that residents, these leaseholders, do not feel like, you know, staff can just deal with day-to-day inquiries, because it's not like they could say, oh, I'm going to go away and find out for you, but what is it that they don't know? You know, are we not training people in the right areas to be able to take, these are general inquiries, they're not going to be deep ones, these are general inquiries. And also about the car parking and saying the antisocial around the car parking, and we're going to look at putting parking permits in there. I don't think that that is always the right answer. Let's deal with the reasons why we've got the antisocial behaviour in there. You know, don't, because it's a car park, everyone's got to have a parking permit. You know, it's not really the right reason to say, oh, there's a car park there, there's a problem in it, oh, we'll charge them there to park there, then they won't go there. They'll go there anyway, because it's night times probably, that's when they're going there, when parking, there ain't no wardens to go and pick it up. So I don't think that parking permits and charging is the way to get around that. And then what I want to know is, I know you're looking at focus groups. How are we, and how often are we as a scrutiny committee going to be able to measure improvements in this survey? You know, it's, you know, we all too often do surveys, and then are we going to wait till, you know, next March before we see what's the outcome of this and what the road to recovery is, so to speak? You know, we can't wait a year to find out what it is. I agree with Joy. You know, it's not about just focus groups. I think that housing officers have an area that they look after. They should be in their car, buy them a bike. You know, they could bike round Tilbury, bike round Grays, bike round Stamford, you know, out of their housing offices. Don't be too cushy in your little office, you know, get out. You know that somebody's not supposed to leave all that stuff outside the flats. In Wellington Road, every single day, you know, there is stuff dumped outside every single day. It looks an eyesore. You know, I go around Elm Road and round there where there's all of the there's flats, you know, and, you know, there's rubbish, and, you know, that's what they're paying service charges for. And it's not. So how are we going to measure, and how often are we going to measure? I know it's a bad report, Chris, I'm sorry, but it's good that you had the, you know, you bought it here in the first place, but, you know, it is a bad report.
Okay. Well, how are we going to measure it? So the plan was to do a tracker survey on a yearly basis, which is basically exactly the same survey as we've undertaken for both our tenants and leaseholders. And what that will do is measure how we're doing against improving on those measures. But we have got our ongoing program of telephone satisfaction surveys that we can obviously get a gauge on a lot of these issues, particularly service charges and value for money as well, from those telephone surveys and the results of those telephone surveys, and they're available to us, the results of which are available to us on a monthly basis. What we're also going to look to implement next year is a 6-monthly leaseholder satisfaction survey as well, which will contain a different question set to the one that we've done previously, and will focus on the issues that leaseholders have raised as part of this star satisfaction survey. So that's how often we'll be able to measure that.
Okay.
Are you happy with that, Lynn?
Yeah, well, yeah, I just think it's and again, I'd like it noted that I don't think just introducing parking charges in car parks is a way to deal with antisocial in car parks. You know, it's a very, very weak, you know, way of getting around it. And I just think it's not the right way to deal with it. You know, deal with the antisocial behaviour. Don't deal with just like charging people who probably are not causing the antisocial behaviour in the car parks, but you're going to charge them because they live near the car park. I don't think it's the way of dealing with it.
Ian's wants to come in, and then it's Councillor Churchman.
I was just reflecting on Lynn's question, which is a good one. I think the answer to it is, in part, it depends what the issue is and what the solution is. So I think when the qualitative research or the conversations, which is perhaps a more accurate way in terms of that research is done, I think we will have a better idea in terms of what some of the solutions are, and depending on what those solutions are, we need to give ourselves time to implement them and then remeasure. So I think if we can come back with the results of the qualitative element, we'll be in a better position collectively to decide how and when to remeasure.
Thanks for that, Ian. Councillor Churchman, you had your hand up and then you put it down, but
Yeah,
go for it, Colin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, I would echo everything that's everyone said here today, and my question was actually answered. But you know, you've got to remember that these leaseholders, they pay these charges, and I actually had to fight for a year to get a regular caretaker, and I mean that's not really satisfactory when you're paying these sort of charges. I mean, are we really looking into this? Because, as I said, a year to get a caretaker or a regular caretaker. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Colin. Chris?
Sorry, Chair, I didn't catch that question.
We were just saying how there's issues where like basic services that like getting caretakers aren't being provided, and it's taking months and even a year to get the most basic of services put in, and Colin's concern about how we're not responding to these obvious issues in a timely fashion. I don't know if Tracy wants to come in on that. Yeah, I think Tracy's going to save your bacon, Chris. Are you on mute, Tracy?
Thank you, Chair. The caretaking charges are not always included in service charges, and we are aware there is an issue around areas that don't have a caretaking service at the moment. And there is currently a review underway to try and identify ways of solving that. But it is tricky, and it's not, if there is no caretaking service, that charge isn't obviously and shouldn't be recharged back to the leaseholders. So we're looking at ways of how we can bring in those services but not increase costs for leaseholders and for the tenants that don't currently receive those services. So it's a little bit complicated, but we are doing some work on that and hope to make progress over the next 12 months.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Tracy. Go on, have one last rant, Joy. Come on.
Chris, don't feel too downhearted. We're here to scrutinise, and that's what we're doing. I think a lot of people will be blaming the year we've had, the COVID we've had, but I think this is systemic. This has been going on for so long, and we're not getting anywhere, really. I think we just either have to get our finger out and think about it better in a different way, because it's not this year. It might be this year that's brought out some other issues, but I don't think we can blame COVID for this, because this has been going on for so long. And Luke was right before, you have to give people pride in where they live, and if we don't brighten up where they live, like stairwells and places, just to make them look a bit better, we're not going to give them pride in where they live. So, but don't be too downhearted, Chris. We're here to scrutinise you, and that's what we've done tonight.
So I will say, Chris, that this is a warts and all report. Yeah, you've accepted that there's a problem. You've brought the right information to us. It's all the information we needed. In times in the past, there's been the department's been a little bit defensive about some of these properties, and so in a bit of denial about how the condition that they're in and how some people feel about them. And this report isn't defensive like that. So I do thank you for your work, and I really look forward to us making some progress on that together. Okay. So thanks very much for your report tonight, Chris.
Thank you, Chair.
Did anyone else have any comments, or should we move on to the recommendations? We can, can't we? Sorry, I haven't got a paper copy again, so I've lost my page. Who got their paper copy? I didn't.
35. What's going back?
I don't know where
The
mine
note.
go. I don't know where my paper copies go. I really don't. I've had
It's
one
page
paper.
25.
My record is getting one paper copy 3 weeks late during the. That was during the problems that Gray's sorting office had with their post.
I know.
It was
So-
just a note and comment.
Just note and comment.
Page
Yeah.
25.
So thanks for that. So we note and comment. Yeah.
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 Brilliant. Thanks very much. I know Chris is here for some more reports, aren't you, Chris? Or are you done now? By all means,
Off you go, Chris.
off you go, Chris. Go on.
Cup of tea.
You don't want to put up with us for any longer, do you?
Thank you all.
See you soon.
Yeah. Bye.
Yeah. So item 7, the housing development programme update.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, that's me. I'm going to present this. This is an update report, and those regular attendees of this committee will be aware that we do come back on a regular basis to go through where we are with the housing development programme, which is part of our open, transparent approach to bringing forward new sites for potentially for housing development. So the first item to bring to your attention is down at paragraph 3 at point 1. And so what we're doing here is there has been consultation with the portfolio holder for housing, Councillor Johnson, and he's agreed to add an additional site at Lyndhurst Road in Stamford Hope to the site options list. That is the process that we have set up in the Councillor Johnson can agree sites, and we bring back for comment to this committee. So apologies, I can't put the site actually up onto the screen for members to view. Hopefully it's in your packs. I've had some IT issues and I'm just currently working off my smartphone, so hopefully people can view that in their packs. This site is currently a housing revenue account owned garage site. It's come out of a review of garage sites that the council hold as being potentially suitable for redevelopment for housing. There are 5 garages not in the council's ownership of the site, so we will need to have dialogue and see if we can reach agreements with the current owners of those garages if we are to assemble the site and bring it all forward for development. Just a very preliminary assessment would indicate that there's potentially capacity for up to 17 dwellings at that location. So that's one site that we are adding to the site options list. But of course, we do know, and it's familiar story, but it bears repeating, that none of this means that the site will definitely go forward. It simply means it goes on that list. And part of the process is, of course, that some sites do come off. And we note further that the Cramerville Street, Fleetwood Grove site, we've done some further detailed analysis around that, and we concluded that it's the constrained access really makes that not a viable proposition for development in terms of getting construction materials on site, safe movement, and so on. And so as a consequence, with Councillor Johnson agreed that site was withdrawn from the list. So one on, one off, we've now got still 14 sites on the list, which potentially could deliver up to 609 new homes. The sites list is set out at Appendix B. Again, I'm unable to put that up, but happy to take questions on that. Next item to draw attention is down at paragraph 3.6, where members, I think at the last committee, asked for details on the size of properties on the options list for council rent compared to demand. And so the table there I hope that does give us an indication of the match between the housing supply target, which is a target agreed with between officers in the housing service that reflects the demand for property size on the housing list. And we review this periodically to ensure that we keep in track with that. And so that's the housing supply target. And below that in the list, you can see the anticipated affordable housing supply and the breakup of property sizes there and the distribution. We've extracted deliberately the supported and older persons accommodation because that would distort otherwise the picture in terms of the broad mix of unit sizes, if you like, because they are for supported and older persons accommodation typically are or what predominantly smaller units of accommodation. Just for completeness, I've just replicated the supply table for the 3 sites that we've been working on currently, which were the completed sites at Alma Court, the completed site there at Claudian Way, and the site still under construction, which is referenced below at Calcutta Road, which is the 35 unit happy standard development, where work's progressing well, and we're still looking at completion date in summer 2021. I'd also like to just bring to members' attention that there's a small scheme, the 5 unit Lower Road proposal. That one has been through consultation. It's into planning, and I believe it's I think it might be next week, or it's actually even this week, the next planning committee, when we're hoping for a decision from planning committee, which would allow us to progress, if approved, to build 5 3-bedroom houses for rent, together with the associated parking, and this will be a 0 gas development, and we have been through to cabinet in January to seek authority to commence a procurement exercise, subject to that planning approval being given. The last thing to bring to members' attention is at 3.9, where the council successfully bid to become one of 3 national pilot authorities to encourage small and medium enterprise building companies. So that's companies with a workforce of less than, I think, 250 people, to bring forward proposals for new homes to be built on land not already owned by the council, on private owned land that the council purchased the land and homes to take those properties into the housing revenue account. And so that whole project is something that we're continuing to progress. I think that all concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take questions and comments. Thank you.
What I'll go to Joy after this, but what are your thoughts regarding the reasons why you didn't get any take up from the SMEs?
Okay, so we had our first round of engagement with the small and medium enterprise builders. I think there was a mix. We've contacted all those that had expressed an interest. There was a mix of response. Some, I think, genuinely misunderstood the tender and thought that it was simply a construction tender. There are some that basically just missed the bidding deadline and expressed interest in coming back, and we're intending trying to further round. And there was just some, and I think what we're trying to do differently this time is to improve the messaging. I think perhaps the messaging couldn't have been clear enough if some people misunderstood the tender. So we need to be simpler and clearer in our language in terms of promoting the opportunity. And I think we need to try and work better with the SME sector to make sure that we've got that message going out at the right time to the right people. And clearly it wasn't effective enough. I have to say one of the other pilots, the only one that I'm aware of, closed with just a single response. It would be unfair for me to go into more details for another council's business, but I think it shows that, and I think it recognises that those in the SME building sector find it very difficult generally to engage with local authorities in this way. And I guess that's part of the reason why there's this national pilot, to try and promote those opportunities and learn the lessons from that. So I'm hopeful that by being clearer on our description of what the opportunity is, by being more proactive in working with the SME sector, we'll hopefully have a more positive response next time.
Thanks, Keith. Councillor Redstone.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Keith, for that. Really good report. Nice to have a good one after the other one. There's obviously, have we got other garage sites that we're going to use in the future? Have we already got them in our heads already as officers? You know, have you got them already sitting there? And the other thing, I've had brilliant feedback from Chadwell the site in Chadwell that got built. If we build all our sites like that one, that will be wonderful, because that is the feedback that is coming back from that Chadwell site is so good. You know, I'd say it's actually excellent. You know, so I don't know whether we're using the same builders to build all our other properties, or whether we've got different builders building different things. But I think we should be looking at that to do that across the borough. Thanks, Keith.
Thank you, Councillor. Just to answer your question, yeah, we do work closely with the housing team, as you'd expect us to, in their review of garage sites. We've looked at some, and some just are not practical, if you like, often with that really tightly constrained access and where there's lots of overlooking. But we continue to work with the housing team, so that when they identify sites, we will bring them forward after some review. And I'd also thank you for the kind words on the Claudian Way scheme. I think it does look a good scheme. It'll look even better when the planting's completed now the season progresses. And we were also really pleased with the outcomes that the Court won, which was down in Grays. And we believe firmly that it's important for us to invest time and energy into getting design right and deliver good quality product. Thank you.
Councillor Worrell.
Thanks, Keith.
Thanks, Chair. I've got a few questions, Luke. Is that
Go.
all right?
Yeah, go for it.
Right. First of all, Lyndhurst Road, the garages. Is this the first that those people that have got those garages, and some of them privately, is this the first they're going to hear about this? You know, have you written to them to tell them that you've added out their garages onto a housing development site?
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Yes, they will be hearing directly from us.
They haven't yet.
We haven't yet. We were concerned that the approach that we took was that these aren't people's homes, and so there's also the need to engage with them fully. But the requirement is for us also to bring it to committee. So we will be in close contact with them clearly to talk about the options and the site.
Okay, well, if I was a garage owner, and especially that there's 5 private garages on there, I'd be pretty angry that this was at a committee before somebody told me that you was thinking about building on my garage, you know, and that's where I've always felt that this list doesn't quite work, this format. You know, we've had so many come on and go back off again that I just think that more needs to be done. You know, what is the process for them to get onto this list and then have so many off? I'd probably say we've had about 9 of the 20. You know, they're either off or paused, or they're not going to happen, you know. And I just think that we're bringing stuff to here that is like that Cramerville Street, that's been on there since day one. I'm sure that the rest of the committee, along with myself, probably thought that that was a goer. It's council, it's our land, you know, the desk-based stuff, the surveys, everything. A year down the line, we've had it there, and then it's just taken off. And I just think that there's something wrong with the way that we're doing stuff that's leaving us wide open, you know. And I'd be really angry, honestly, I'd be really angry if I owned one of those 5 garages and all of a sudden you're looking at building on my garage. You know, it's not your garage. And then I looked at the list, and we've got Whiteacre Pools, Prince of Wales. There was a press release last week. Nobody thought about there's a zebra crossing that leads straight to a primary school straight out of it. So the demolition's paused. You know, Darnley Road. You know, is this going to be affected by the Grays regen? We know that the Grays Park one is. Richmond Road, paused. Riverview, paused. Lyndhurst Road, you know, they don't even know about it yet. So I just think that the list, whilst I want to see all of these houses built, I'm not sure we've got the right pieces of land on this list, Keith. It's not there's something not right in the mechanism.
Okay, I mean, I take on board your comments, Councillor, particularly in relation to those garages. I think there's one of the difficulties is that we moved from a position 18 months ago or so where we weren't bringing information back to committee, and we were clear that we needed to be open, transparent, and clearer. And there was a process set out that when we initially started this approach some 18 months ago of why pieces of land found themselves on the site options list. I think part of the whole process of doing what we do in a very open way on the list doesn't necessarily mean sites will come and go and come on and fall off. What I think is worth just sort of referencing is the report that went to Cabinet on the 10th, I think, of this month, from the director of Director of Finance, Governance and Property, which did set out, and I think this will help the whole process, that there was a discussion still to be had and papers to come back around the options for the options for where housing delivery could be achieved using the council's assets, and it set out a number of options how that could happen, those delivery routes. So I think firmly that when it comes back through into overview and scrutiny and cabinet, will help us unpause some of these sites, and it will give some more certainty to the delivery programme.
Can I come back, Luke?
Yeah, of course.
You know, like, let's just go back to the Chadwell site, right? Great, you know, agreed under Labour. I was the cabinet that, you know, oversee that development, the Tops Club, Calcutta Road, all three of those, you know, under Labour, and when I was the portfolio, all of those on what could have been controversial sites. You know, we took a piece of ground in that was housing land in Chadwell, you know, went to the forum, got all the councillors in the room, the property board. So it's not that we're suddenly become open and transparent. We was open and transparent, but what we always did was we did the homework before we published anything. And that's what we've not done this time. I've had, like, you know, you've had to answer an inquiry to me about Richmond Road. We've got the Cubs, like the Scouts have that, you know, the Gurkhas use it. They're all worried now because it's out in the public domain that they're going to lose their place where they meet, you know. But instead of going out and speaking to them, you know, and speaking to the people on these sites, we're not doing that, you know. So it's not that we've never done it in the past. It's just that we did it. We had a property board, you know, and there was all the three main parties at the time were part of that property board and said, will this work? When I see this list, I went, 5 of them sites need to come off before you publish this. And they wouldn't come off, you know, and I really felt that they should come off. And those 5 sites are now off, you know, because we as councillors know our communities the best. So I bet that every one of us is sitting thinking, there's a bit of green land, there's a bit of a car park, there's a bit of garages. Is that on the list? I think that I just think there's another way to do this, because I do think that we're just running from one problem into another. And I think that you'll be very, very lucky to not run into some problems with Lyndhurst Road. One, from the houses that are already there and that could well be overlooked. And 2, from the 5 people that own their garages privately. And they're going to find out about this after we've had it at a committee that you want their garages.
Can I just before you answer that, because I'm just going to support Lynn, you know, you've got a stakeholder engagement in any project is absolutely essential. But I do think there's sort of the property board would have been a meeting behind closed doors, yeah?
Yeah.
between councillors. Yeah.
And then you went out and then you spoke to
Yeah.
the community and then you brought it back before you published it, like forums.
Yeah.
You know, why are we not using those community groups? You didn't have all of this big furore about the Chadwell houses. That took a big bit of park. And they've
So
been
what?
built without the bit of park that was promised to them. So I think that there's going to be some moans.
Yeah. So it's not having all of these sites on a list, and you know that at such an early stage and being brought to a public forum like this. I know that the intention is to be utterly transparent, but what we're actually doing is worrying everybody who lives near loads and loads of sites, even though we're not going to build on half of them. So perhaps these discussions about whether it's suitable or not should actually be held in private, so we can get these glaring issues out of the way, and then brought to committee once we've got a list that's actually realistic, so that we're not worrying and stressing people out unnecessarily, and also starting a load of politicking as well for no reason. You know, it's just
absolutely.
So perhaps sometimes we should have the democratic oversight a little bit later in the process. And I think that's what Lynn is asking for.
Yeah.
And I
don't
think
worry, people, because if I was in Lyndhurst Road now, Luke, I would be worried, you know, if I owned one of those, you know, I really would, you know, and I didn't want to have to fight over 5 green spaces, but I felt I had I didn't have any choice than to fight for those, you know, and I'm sure, you know, there'll be other battles down the road, but I just think that we need to head some of them off before it makes it into black and white on paper.
it's like the local plan as well. Like, you know, you don't
use
have, like, you have like the discussions between the parties beforehand, so you have sort of an idea of parameters, about what's possible, and then you bring that debate, you know, around what's possible into scrutiny and into a meeting, and your parameters are narrowed down, so you're a lot more focused when you actually come to the decision making process. And it's, you know, and you've done the consultation first as well, and so when you come to committee's a lot more informed as well. So no, I do appreciate that this process, Keith, is trying to be as transparent as possible, but it's just whether or not, you know, being transparent about, you know, completely, like, you know, stage 1 ideas that we can find out in stage 2 are not a goer. Perhaps we should not be bringing them to committee until stage 3, when we know they're actually a goer or not, so then we can discuss them in a fully informed way. So I do appreciate that. I think Lynn's got a point there, to be honest. So if you want to come back on that, Keith.
Okay, all I guess I really want to say is, I think we started, and I can't, and I wasn't with the council at the time, the other projects that were initiated, so I accept entirely what's been said to the councillor. I know that we were being pressed at the start of when we started to produce these reports to bring stuff in a more open way, and you know, and I think any process is never good forever. Everything does need to be reflected on and changed. I'm very happy to take on the comments that have been made tonight, and we'll look at how we introduce new sites on it, and we'll have a review to see, you know, is what we're doing in terms of the presentation, the information out through these committees remain fit for purpose. Very happy to take that away and have a look at it.
Thank you. I think that that's really sensible, Keith. Could I just ask for an update on the Prince of Wales pub? You know, like they were going to demolish it and now they're not. And where are we with that? Because that is prime. That'd be perfect little development.
Okay, we are. There was some late objections raised within the council for some of those issues relating to the method statement for demolition. As a consequence, we've had to resubmit the application with some more information. So that will go ahead, but I'm afraid that we have to withdraw and resubmit.
Okay, all right then. Thank you. Thanks, Chair, for thank
No,
you.
that's
I
fine.
got off of my chair,
No,
and
you
hopefully,
did well.
if we move forward a different way, it'd be really good.
Yeah, because it just cuts out. You're opening yourself up as well. You know, we're just before an election as well at the moment, and you're opening yourself up for all sorts of like silly games as well. I know most councillors, Thurrock, it's not too bad, but you know, you are opening yourself up with bringing these early stage projects to, you know, all sorts of nonsense going on as well, with, you know, getting silly politics involved in it as well. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Keith, for your report. My question, I did heard you have said something about 3.9 about SME, but I was struggling to hear at that time. So how many are we expecting from SME to build, you know, how many properties, and how many are we expecting to buy from them?
Okay, so this was a tendering opportunity. The value is capped to enable us to do it without having to have a national procurement limit. So the numbers of units could be in the region of 10, 15, something like that in this initial pilot. It depends on the location, the type, and so on. So we'll need the submissions to be made from those small or medium enterprise builders, and which we can review and then select and go forward with into contract. This is a pilot. If it works well, if it gives good quality, good value, then it's something I'm sure members would wish to look and to repeat. But for the moment, I'd imagine that sort of number, potentially sort of 10, 15, something of that order.
So have you allocated any budget for this purchase?
Okay, so what we would need to do, I mean, clearly all this has been discussed internally with finance colleagues. We do have, you know, the ability to fund development through the HRA, through the rental stream, through the use of right to buy receipts, and potentially through use of Homes England grant if appropriate. So there are, you know, we can identify the resources and the prudential borrowing if it needs to be to fund those sorts of projects. For any decision to go ahead, then clearly we would come back to Cabinet and seek the budget approval for any particular project that comes forward.
Thank you. Just the last question. You know, on this Richmond Road, obviously Lynn has mentioned earlier, you know, the Gurkhas, they are doing their meetings, that's their meetup point. You know, obviously they have massive services for our country. So obviously when we are considering this side, you know, so we must consider them as well. So is there any plan, or is there something, you know, for them? Do we have in something in hand, like to offer them if this site is being redeveloped? So will we offer them some place for their meetings? It could be either a community hall or anything. So what will happen to them?
Okay, so what the first point to make is, of course, that, you know, there are no decisions being made. If there were, if we were to progress on that site, then I think there are options. They could include re-provision of facilities on site. It could be working with other parts of the council to find alternative places. So those are the sort of conversations that would need to happen in due course. But clearly, we do recognise that there are existing users on there, and they are valued, and so, you know, that very much alive and aware to the need to engage with those. As I say, that there are a range of options that could happen, but that there's no decision to progress. There's certainly no decisions in terms of that detail of alternative provision at the moment.
Brilliant, thanks for that. I'm conscious of time, so unless anyone's got anything urgent, I'll move on if that's okay. All good, brilliant. So we've got 3 points to note there regarding the developments. Are they all noted?
Yeah.
Brilliant. So we'll move on to the next item, and that is the homeless prevention and rough sleeping strategy. And we've got Ryan. So he's always got a big smile, as Ryan, hasn't he? So
Thank you very much, Chair.
We've got Ryan's report here.
Thank you. So this is the first annual update to come to Housing Review and Scrutiny Committee for the Homelessness Prevention and Rough Sleeping Strategies Action Plan. The strategy itself was published, approved by Cabinet in January 2020 and had oversight beforehand and scrutiny from this committee. Over the past 12 months, we have made some steps towards developing an action plan. Understandably, I hope, there have been some factors that have prevented some progress being made through the COVID pandemic. So the first thing I wanted to touch on, the most significant thing that was established was a Homelessness Partnership Board. The Homelessness Partnership Board met for the first time in March 2020, and this brings together key council services. It brings together colleagues from our health partners. It brings together partners from the community, voluntary and faith sector. Within this group, the action plan has been developed, and it's been designed in that way because, as has been said before, homelessness is not just a housing issue. It is a wider, more complex societal issue, and it's right that there are many parties that need to work together to reach some positive outcomes. Now, one thing which is so far missing with regards to representation from this board is some people with lived experience, some experts by experience, because we do recognise quite how important those voices are to help direct us and lead us to the positive outcomes. Unfortunately, we've found it difficult in the past 12 months to engage in that way, but it is absolutely a priority for the 12 months ahead, certainly hopefully sooner than that, so we can get representation on that partnership board. The action plan focuses on the 4 strategic themes, which are partnership and collaboration, health and well-being, provision and accessibility, and customer excellence. And whilst we have had some challenges to face this year and what we could achieve, we have made some positive progress so far this year. So just to highlight some of these, so with regards to partnership and collaboration, a particular aim was to work with partners to increase the use of the StreetLink app. A communications campaign is being established, and fairly recently, within the last couple of months, a video was posted to the council's YouTube page, which outlines what our outreach team does, how to use the StreetLink app. If you haven't had a chance to see it yet, then I'll see if I can get that video sent round to you all as committee members, and I would encourage you, if you can, to share it far and wide, because the more people that know about it, the better. Through the Homelessness Partnership Board, there's joint protocols between children and housing, which are being strengthened to make sure that we can tackle those particular issues. And also, a briefing has been arranged. It was arranged towards the end of the last calendar year for the No Homeless Veterans campaign to encourage all housing staff to think veteran as a particular action. Unfortunately, within winter 2020, we couldn't have a winter night shelter. The guidelines at the time wouldn't allow, but we did have SWEP provision for the severe weather emergency protocol. Elsewhere in provision and accessibility, we have taken a handover of the Tops Club site and the Claudian Way development, 82 fantastic new council homes, which are delivered to a very high quality, as members have said this evening. And also, as was referenced in Keith's previous report, we did undertake a review of what it looks like our social housing need is based on our housing register information. And that does feature in that previous report that you saw. So the next steps really is to build on this. We've taken this year in the challenging circumstances we were in to develop an action plan for us to really make some progress for the rest of the life of the strategy. But I do want to flag one more thing. And that is, although we have had these challenges with this action plan, this pandemic gave an opportunity to do something that in other circumstances we wouldn't be able to have done. And that was through the Everyone In initiative. We've managed to make a positive difference to a significant number of individuals' lives and their opportunities and their housing circumstances. It's been a joined up approach. It hasn't certainly been the council in isolation. There has been a lot of engagement from a lot of different parties. But that is although this year has not been very positive, that is a particular positive that I did want to share. And at that point, I'll stop there and welcome any questions or comments you might have.
Thank you very much, Ryan. I'll be very brief because I just want to make sure that members get the full amount of time on this because it's quite an important report. Everyone in just wonderful. You know, I mean, council's delivered on the promise that's been made and the funding that's been offered. Let's hope that the government promises about ending street homelessness for good come good, and we see the funding that's needed to make that happen. My main concerns, I mean, the homelessness service is it's got a lot better under the last assistant director, I think, to be honest, over the last few years. But you're still putting, I know you're still putting placing too many people out of borough, which is, something that we need to get a handle on. We need to have enough provision and be heading towards provision in borough and have a real plan to make it happen. And so, I mean, that's still my main concern. I could talk about this all night, but I know because I work in a department like yours, so I've got a lot of questions, but I'll pass on to members because I think they're probably going to have a lot of questions on this report. Councillor Worrell.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for your report, Ryan. And you know that this is something that, really interests me is the homelessness. And I just wondered, are we carrying vacancies in our homelessness team? Is it something that, we've got a bit of a problem with? And I'll tell you why after if you tell me we have.
So I'd say it's not an area which is within my line management. I do know that there have been a number of posts over the past 12 months that have been created. Certainly there's been some funding provided by government for us to do some new things. I know they're expanding their team or have expanded their team. I wouldn't be able to say if there were vacancies that they're covering, but I do believe there is good coverage within that service at this point in time.
All right then, okay, because I've got people that are really struggling, to get hold of homeless officers. Who are Jigsaw? Because I've tried to get hold of whoever Jigsaw are. I don't even know who they are. We haven't been briefed as councillors. I ring up the homeless department. I need to speak to somebody in Jigsaw. I have tried since last Friday morning to pin somebody down. You get put through and there's no answer phone. And I've got somebody that is homeless and they are got a Jigsaw worker and I can't get hold of them.
So Jigsaw is the name of the case management system that is used in that particular service area. Okay. So that's how they track cases and progress things. Councillor Worrell, if you wanted to pass details through, I'll help link you up with the right
It is really frustrating. I have got 2 young people that are homeless. One of them's a 19-year-old girl, and her homeless officer has said to her, if you don't stay at your nan's tonight, I suggest you go down to Grays, get yourself a tent and a sleeping bag off of them. This is a 19-year-old girl. I just think that there is things wrong, with the homeless team, and I just think that they need. Honestly, Ryan, please, could you send me a number? I can ring you tomorrow and give you these 2 cases because I've got 2 young people. And one of them is a care leaver, and he's got nowhere to live, and he's been turned down for his deposit. But that's aside, I do think that we need to, and it's something that come out of the last reports that we looked at last year, is about staff following through with their casework. So it's okay somebody being able to register as homework. We need somebody to, red, amber, green that these cases are being dealt with. But I do want to say that in amongst COVID, there's been some real shining stars, little charities out there, other than like the Friends of Essex and London Homeless. But there's a little charity called It's Nice to Be Nice. And I'm sure that, when we're talking to stakeholders, speak to some of these little groups that have got themselves together to go out and feed people. Because this girl was single-handedly got volunteers within the community to feed those people in those bed and breakfasts that we put our homeless in. So we as the council weren't rocking up with their food. we had little voluntary groups out there turning up, and you'd see, can somebody like make me 20 chili con carnes? Can somebody make me this? And she was giving her time up to go out and deliver that. So there's been some real heroes in amongst this COVID, in this pandemic. And I just think that sometimes we look at the big people to consult with when actually there's some little real heroes out there.
I think that if I address that last point first, I think that is a very relevant point, and this is why this issue of homelessness needs to be dealt with in partnership, because everyone knows someone else. You will know of organisations that other members might not, that we don't know about, and we may have other resources. So again, I would encourage, if anyone knows of any organisations that are supporting people, please make us aware so we can link in with them. And I will reach out to you tomorrow, Councillor Morrell.
Please do that, because I'll need to offload my cases to you. Thank you.
Councillor Redsell and then Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Lynn's got a good point about the red, green and amber. Actually, there should be some system there that that helps. Ryan, have we got anybody sleeping rough at the moment that we can't do anything for, or don't want to come into the system?
I haven't been made aware of any at the moment. I did ask today for an update on where we are at the moment with progress with everyone in. It seems that there have been 77 people helped over the past 12 months through that particular initiative. Whether there may be some people that are hard to engage or don't want to come in, possibly, but I think that it would be very, very few and far between now.
I know I always ask it, but have we got any ex-servicemen out there who are in the system or are sleeping rough? Do you know? Or is it something you can come back to me with?
I'll find out. I'll come back to you. It's not something I've been made aware of, but we'll find out for you, Councillor.
Brian, that'd be lovely. Thank you.
Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Ryan. Thanks for your report. It's quite impressed with it, but bits and pieces of it. But on page 48, 4.4 section, it states there that 60 individuals have been helped. What way have they been helped? Have they been permanently housed, or is it temporarily housed? What way have they been helped?
So at the point of writing that was 60. Now it is that 77 figure. So if I can give you some examples, at some point, 74 of those 77 has been placed in emergency accommodation. Since that point, 37 have moved into permanent accommodation. 3 have been assisted by other organisations or agencies, social care, the Red Cross. Some have been supported back to friends and family. So generally, we would have provided at least temporary emergency accommodation, but they will have been supported through to find somewhere to move into in a more permanent basis.
That's the best way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Have we got any other comments on this report? No. So shall we go on to the recommendations, which is just to note the contents? Is that okay? Brilliant. Thanks very much. Thanks for that, Ryan. I think we've got a triple header from Ryan tonight, haven't we?
Yes.
So let's go on to the interim housing strategy timetable, please.
Thank you, Chair. So members of the committee may well remember in October 2019, I came to you to present a report to start development of the housing strategy. Since that point in time, there were a number of factors which initially delayed that development, but since made it not the most responsible thing to do, given the uncertainty and instability that there is around, certainly at the start of the financial year, but to some extent now. That being said, we are approaching a point in time where there are other pieces of work happening elsewhere in the organisation, which will benefit from having the housing strategy delivered alongside and to support and in partnership, such as the local plan and the health and wellbeing strategy. So this report proposes the development, initially at least, of an interim housing strategy, whilst there is still some factors which are fluid, shall we say. The collation of an evidence base is underway at the moment as we speak. So we're looking at the evidence base that's provided for the previous strategy, refreshing that, and that will help us to identify some key themes and issues. We'll then move into the summer months where we plan to consult, and this is where we have the challenge about an interim or a full document. As a housing strategy, it's not just about our own stock or our own tenants or our own leaseholders. It's a housing strategy for the borough, and it's important that we get as full representation and consultation as is possible. Now, if we can only consult with a limited number of people, then it's not necessarily representative views. And I do appreciate from comments that have been raised this evening, as well as previous committee meetings, quite how important and how high valued consultation is. So all being well, we'll get towards the summer months and we can undertake some consultation. We'll have a checkpoint where we'll be able to see if we proceed with a shorter term document or if it does progress to a full housing strategy. There are some other pieces of work which are happening at the moment to support this, one of which is an asset management strategy. So that might also help to address some other concerns that have been raised this evening. Throughout, it's important that we keep you as members and as Housing Overview and Scrutiny Committee updated. So I would intend to come back to you regularly, if not, I wouldn't say every meeting, but certainly frequently, to give you updates and have your voices providing me some views. And again, I'll stop there for any comments or questions.
Thank you, Ryan. And this is sort of a holding report, isn't it? Can I just ask quickly, before I say something, can I just make sure that Councillor Worrell is here? Is Councillor, because we lost, are you here, yeah?
I lost connection, so I'm going to leave my camera off.
That's all right.
Because it might just be too much, but I did lose connection.
That's all right. That's right. So we've still got everyone here. Good. I mentioned this in pre-meet. There's so many unknowns at the moment. I mean, it's just I understand why this is sort of a holding report, really, just to say, look, we wanted this strategy in place. We can't finalise it at the moment. So, and I think personally, I think it's a sensible course of action. You know, there's just so every single area of housing and the connected, you know, spheres around housing. There are just so many question marks and so many possible variables and futures at the moment that I do think we need to have a, you know, have a pause when it comes to putting together a strategy, because we just don't know what the next challenge is going to be. We don't know, you know, putting our eggs in one basket at the moment would be, you know, it would be a dreadful way to go forward. So I do understand it. Councillor Abbas.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan, for this report. So my question is, like, obviously, you know, at 4.6, you have given us some dates and event and stages. But we see in west of Borough, particularly in West Thurrock and Fleet and these kind of areas, no, there are like hundreds and hundreds of new developments. So how, because these developments are already underway, so how will we make sure, like, you know, whatever our time frame is, these new existing developments will fit into these things, you know?
So to be clear, the strategy itself isn't necessarily about the provision of specific sites or how development is necessarily undertaken in the borough. Perhaps that's more to do with the local plan. If I were to talk about the residents that would be moving to those properties, I would hope that we could have as full campaign as possible to make people aware of the opportunity to engage with our consultation. We can get our our themes out to them. We can ask them the questions about what they'd like to talk to us about. I'd hope we could hopefully link in with our colleagues across the council who could direct us a bit further. But other than that, I'm not sure necessarily how I could respond to that. Sorry, Councillor.
Councillor Redsill.
Yeah, I wasn't going to come in, Chair, but as I chair the local development plan, we've made it very clear on there, and that's why all members need to get on, on the same page we are as the local development plan. We all as members need to get together with this. We've made it clear to every bit of the local development plan, the infrastructure's got to come first. We have to get there with the infrastructure. If we don't, we are not going to benefit from the rest of it. We've said this, and I've been around a long time to know when the last development plan came to this, and I don't want this one to be the same. I want us to move forward in a better way. We have to have that infrastructure there before we can move forward. And as Ryan is right, this isn't about specific sites, and I think we need more of this at a later stage. We'll see a lot more coming through for this. And but if you listen to the local development plan, we are ahead of the game. Really, we need to get this local development plan through now, otherwise we can't move forward with everything. But the infrastructure has to be there first. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Worrell.
Thank you. Ryan, thanks for your report. And so we wrote this report back in 2015. So have you used the 2015 report to lay you the foundations for the new refreshed report? And how have we measured, so all too often we write reports and we have all of these strategies and they get tucked away because we get on with the business of the day. We've got to have a way of measuring ourselves, and I just wondered, has any work been done on measuring us against the 2015 objectives, and how did we do?
So very good questions. Thank you, Councillor. So firstly, with regards to the 2015 report, we are using it as a bit of a foundation insofar as we will look at the evidence base that's provided as a starting point to make sure that we capture an up-to-date picture of those figures. So that is as far as we are there at the moment. We are really at the very early stages of this development. So with regards to specific things we might be looking to achieve or deliver through the strategy, whether any of those things were in the 2015-2020 report, we haven't reached that point yet. However, we absolutely will do. I know that, I joined the organisation in the very early days of that strategy, and I know that since that point in time, the housing landscape has shifted significantly. Changes in rental increases and decreases, affected business plans and that type of thing. But we will certainly look at that, and if there are still things which are needing to be delivered and are still just as applicable now, then I'm sure we can find a way to reflect them in a new document.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Ryan.
I think Lynn, when she talks about 2015, I think she's and your response to that, I think it does actually. It's so, even pre-pandemic, the housing market in Thurrock, and it's been so much upheaval. I mean, if you think houses, the private sector is probably 33% more expensive now than it was back in 2015. Probably going on for that in some properties, like 3-bedroom properties that are now going for 1,200 quid. Were probably
£1,200 round here.
Probably 800 quid back in 2015, 850. Yeah. So it is there. It is difficult. It's difficult to have a housing strategy when you've got such an incredible fluctuation in the market around you.
But then do we need to do it more regularly, Luke? If it's 2015 and it's so out of date, then it's no good us writing one in 2021 and not revisiting until 2026. If we're not going to use the strategy, we've got to measure ourselves against that. We've got to use it. So maybe we refresh it, in 3 years and not in 5 years.
I think that the freeze on rents has sort of kiboshed the strategy ever since then, to be honest. So it was just fighting fires, wasn't it, for the last few years? It was just seeing what we could cut and fighting fires. But now we've got that rent back, then we've got a bit more leeway. So perhaps perhaps we do need to start this strategy again. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. Ryan, as Councillor Joe Redstall mentioned earlier on, the local plan, as we all know, that infrastructure should come first. I'm afraid the way we're running it here, it seems it's upside down, the wrong way around. It seems like infrastructure is coming in last, right? There's so many new builds across the borough, so many in Ockenden, unreal. The schools are busting at the seams. You can't get an appointment to see the doctor. Got traffic full everywhere you go. There's nowhere to park. It's an absolute nightmare. In a nutshell, really, I've been told by planning that we've got an expert guy coming in to sort the infrastructure out, okay? So put us out this problem. But again, it's the wrong way around. He's in now, but how's he going to achieve this? I can't see him achieving it unless half of Thurrock is demolished and we totally reshape it. I can't see enough of why.
You need to come and join the local Thames Plan Task Force, Chris. You need to get involved on that. You can talk about that all night then.
Yeah, but I've been there and done all this, but it's just talking to a brick wall, isn't it? You
know. Councillor Redstall, last comment.
You can come and talk to us anytime, Chris. Anytime on the local development plan, you can come and talk anytime. Yeah. The trouble with a lot of planning that's already gone through, already went through 5 years ago. We can't really do anything about all that. You saying about South Ockenden, we know that's all gone through and we've got the problems already there. But what we can do is make all the stuff that's coming through now, we can make and I've made it very clear on the development plan that I want the infrastructure done first. And we are contemplating things that we probably didn't do in the last lot of planning we did, the last local development plan. So it's hopefully going to work better this time, I hope.
The horses are already bolted, Joyce. It's already bolted. The horse.
Yeah. But as I say, we need. I think these are questions for the local plan development task force, to be honest. But if anyone's not got any more questions about the interim housing strategy, then we'll, conscious of time, we'll move on if that's okay. All right. We're good, yeah. Cheers.
Well done, Ryan.
Well done, Ryan. And Ryan's, if you thought the first two were good, this is the best. This is amazing. So come on, Ryan.
Thank you very much, Chair. As the last one in the series for this municipal year, this is our Housing Service COVID-19 response update. Set out throughout the report is the detail of how the Housing Service has tailored its approach, adjusted its approach to meet the needs of our residents whilst meeting changing guidance and legislation, really. We took decisions to suspend services, alter services or reduce services. These are most prevalent in the first period of lockdown. More recently now, most things have continued. Repairs have been ongoing. Compliancy work has continued. Where there have been instances where tenants are self-isolating or are shielding, then on a case-by-case basis, those are dealt with appropriately. One thing which has never really resumed is the use of the sheltered housing halls. Plans were made to get these reopened, but again, changing guidance prevented that from happening. So those still remain unused as communal halls for everyone to be using. I won't go through the specifics of every single service area, but particular things, positive things throughout the year. I would say that the rent and welfare team have continued to do fantastic work, offering financial inclusion support to our tenants across the borough and making sure that they are supported. I would also say, as a particular highlight, again, the letting of all of those new builds in the middle of the pandemic has been a very positive and welcome addition to the housing stock. And again, I'll stop there and take any feedback that you might have.
Brilliant, thanks for that. I think we've got some people who are not muted having little comments that are interrupting Paul Ryan. So if you could make sure you mute when other people are speaking. If I could just ask something I asked you at the pre-meet, if we, in the hope that this vaccination is successful and it makes a fundamental difference to the way that we can operate going forward, if the officers could just guide the committee through what they see as in that best case scenario, the hangover that we're going to be facing the housing department as a result of the pandemic, even if we get best case scenario and it's almost business as normal, what are we going to, what's been stored up, what are these problems that are coming down the line as a result of this pandemic? If the officers could make a few comments on that'd be very helpful to the committee.
So happy to go first here. So my view on this is that over the course of the past 12 months, there has been significant intervention to help people in their stability and their security. There's been the ban on residential evictions, which even between publishing these papers and now has been extended to the end of May. There's been the extension to the universal credit, additional £20, and an extension to the coronavirus job retention scheme. Both of those are due to end in September. And until those things come to an end and people, that support is no longer there, people have to support themselves again, it's unclear to know the full impact. Hopefully, the vaccine program and the state of the country at that point in time means that businesses are able to operate again, are staying afloat, and we don't see a wave of unemployment or businesses, unfortunately, closing their doors. But if that does happen, then there's suggestions that we might be facing a bit of a not tsunami, but certainly an increase in presentations for our homelessness service and people really facing some financial difficulty. But again, whilst interventions are in place, it's difficult to quantify that really.
If I could just ask Ian and Tracy, because they've both had some very pertinent comments when I asked them this question, I think it's quite valuable to the committee.
I think there's, I hesitate to put this on public record because I've had a rule throughout this epidemic that I wouldn't make predictions, and it served me well. I think trying to make predictions about COVID is a bit of a fool's errand. But what we have observed throughout the epidemic is a fundamental change in the way that health services have been provided and care has been altered in order to provide sufficient capacity for the NHS to deal with the COVID epidemic. That was absolutely the right thing to do. But because of that, what worries me, I think in public health terms, is that there's a lot of stuff that would have happened normally that hasn't happened, particularly around long-term health conditions. And I worry that we could be storing up a bigger public health crisis in terms of things that haven't been picked up and serious adverse health events that are not COVID related. And that may drive the demand for more specialist and supported housing and adult social care provision. I think we all recognise now we're likely to have, or we've started to see, a mental health crisis, and I know we were all reflecting before we started this committee about how fed up we were of lockdown personally, and I think it's taking its toll on people. So I think there's potentially a need for more supported housing, but undoubtedly the biggest risk, and as Ryan says, as the considerable support, I think, to the economy that's been provided starts to be scaled back, because ultimately it's not going to be affordable long term. We are potentially likely to see spikes in unemployment and with it, all of those associated problems, including potentially an increase in homelessness. But we'll just have to wait and see. With the I think the vaccine programme has been tremendously successful in England, and actually in Thurrock, in terms of the data that the public health team are now getting, we're actually doing better than Mid and South Essex and England in general in most age groups. So I think the NHS response to vaccination has been phenomenal locally, and we owe those frontline professionals a huge debt of gratitude. And so, kind of best case scenario, we're seeing our numbers fall dramatically. The economy bounces back very quickly. There's likely to be, I think, quite a lot of pent-up demand where people haven't been able to spend money if they have managed to maintain their employment and because of lockdown, and that may counteract some of those figures. So I'm hesitant to make too many predictions. We will have to continue to monitor this very closely, but I think maybe the two risks are homelessness and the impact in terms of the economy and other health conditions not being picked up, and how that may translate into housing demand.
Did you want to add anything, Tracy?
Thank you, Chair. Really, no, just to reiterate that those are issues, and what we will be doing in the housing service is looking at how we can continue to deliver the improvement programmes and the capital and plan maintenance programmes and the repair service, but also look out for issues that may come out of people being restricted in what they can do and possibly earn incomes, so that we can help them. So what we'll try and do, working with Ryan and the teams, is to make sure we've got capacity to respond to those issues and that we can be flexible depending on how things evolve, and also support our own staff who've also been through this pandemic like the rest of us and may well have issues that affect them just as much as the general population, so that we can work together. Thank you, Chair.
Tracy, I just wanted, before I bring in Councillor Edsel, we might not need it but I just wanted to say if we could extend standing orders, and I'll say till 10 we won't need it, but is that agreed?
Agreed.
Yes.
Councillor Edsel.
I'll keep it short and sweet. Ryan, we seem to, at the moment, have a lot of car crime, and car crime seems to be the main thing that's coming through. Is it, do you think, with the pandemic, we're everybody at home with their cars and everything else, do you think that's why it's gone that way? The other thing is that just concerned me a bit is the new Claudian Way housing, council housing. Residents were given homes on that estate because they actually lived in or came from Chadwell St Mary. Does that mean that there were people on the list that should have been before them? That's the only concern I had really with that. It just seemed if we were giving it to people that were from Chadwell St Mary, they might not have been on the list so long. I don't know if that's why.
To be honest, I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily qualified to answer the first question about car crime. So I won't try and answer that. For the second point, though, about Claudian Way, we've taken this approach with each of our last 4 new developments to have a local lettings plan, and that is so that we, for the 3, the Echoes, Alma Court, and Claudian Way, 75% of first lettings have gone to people within a particular boundary. So for Claudian Way, it was Chadwell St Mary. There were still a proportion of properties that were available through the housing register. So as it happened, all of the bungalows were offered to people with specific needs for a bungalow across the borough, because we don't build very many of them, and they are so valuable in helping people to live independently. But for the houses and for the flats, 25% were made available through the housing register for people to bid on as usual. Now, what that does mean is for all of those 75% that went to people within Chadwell St Mary who are already our tenants, that has freed up other properties for people to still move into. So people still will be able to bid on those from the housing register or the waiting list or the transfer list, depending on where they were. But as part of the new development within an existing community, we feel that it's right for people that live in that area to be offered the opportunity to move there.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite a fan of local lettings policies like that. To be honest, I think you get a lot better buy-in from the local community if you can, if you go next door to the block of flats and say we're building a block of flats next to you, and there's going to be a load of disruption. If you can say, a percentage of these you're going to get, you just get it's just a much better way of building and satisfying the needs of the local community who have to put up with the inconvenience of that build. So it's just something that I've always thought we should do a little bit more of. Councillor Abbas.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ryan, for your reports. My concerns are on these antisocial behavior increase. We understand people are staying inside, but this is a massive increase. And particularly in Garrison Estate, there, I think it's on your page 75. It says there were damages of £22,000. So these are very kind of, unimaginable amount of money. So what can we do more? And we have noted also from previous report, the people, even though that's not the whole reflection, but still we can see the residents, they are very dissatisfied, with these antisocial behavior outcome and how these things are handled. So what more can we do, to address this?
So, I mean, as you pointed out, the feedback about antisocial behaviour was present in the leaseholder satisfaction survey, was present in the tenant satisfaction survey. There has been specific effort made, an increasing effort made to tackle these. Certainly between our housing operations colleagues who are responsible for generally managing our estates and their upkeep, and our antisocial behaviour and safeguarding teams. I know that they are paying particular attention and putting considerable effort into tackling these. I think that it's a work in progress. I know that it is high on residents' agendas, and hopefully we'll see some improvements in that regard soon. But it wouldn't necessarily be my place to comment on the work that they're doing. But work is certainly underway.
Thank you. Just share two more questions, actually, very brief ones. On homelessness, I remember, in previous reports, it was mentioned there were some people who are with no recourse to public funds, or some they had visa issues. So what happened to those people? Are they still here, or have they been moved on to somewhere else?
I'm not familiar with the specific cases, but I do know from colleagues that they are making sure that those people are supported as best as is possible, and as we are able to do through our duties. But I don't have that specific information. I will find out though, Councillor Abbas. I'll let you know what that situation is.
Please, thank you. Just one more briefly. On rent areas, there is obviously a lot of increase in these, and we understand people are they have impact on financially on their income, but obviously a lot of people, they are receiving these universal credits, but on the other hand these area figures are going up. So what more can be done to obviously we are here to see to make sure our income doesn't fall below certain level. So how can we make sure to reduce these areas?
So there are specific challenges with regards to universal credit and the way that new claims for universal credit are processed and are paid to individuals. That's within that system. What we are doing, we are taking at times a data-led approach where we're looking at indicators and signals in advance, hopefully, that people might be starting to face some difficulties. And we're really targeting our efforts to support those people as and when people need them. Previously, we've maybe taken more of a blanket approach, which has been beneficial, but maybe not the best use of officers' time. So I would say in the last 12 months, we've taken a much more data-led approach to identifying people that need the support most. And our financial inclusion officers have been fantastic in helping people to maximise the income, make sure they're receiving benefits that they're entitled to, and helping with other advice and support wherever possible. and hopefully we'll continue to do that.
Brilliant. Thanks for that. Councillor Worrell?
Thanks, Chair. Ryan, you touched on sheltered accommodation and the communal halls. I've had countless calls from people in the sheltered accommodation, and they're really struggling. They're stuck in there. They've got nowhere to go. What are we doing to make them COVID? I know that we did try, to get them open, but they are really struggling. And I think that Ian's right. We're banking up a whole load of mental health issues ready to come down the road and hit us. And there's going to be a big call on mental health for people to go for counselling. I really, really do believe that there's going to be a big call on that when we come out of this. But I know that the residents in sheltered accommodation, I've had them call me from all over Thurrock, asking me like if there's anything that we can do that allows them to be able to book some time, to be able to go into the accommodation, into the halls. What's the plans?
So firstly about, I completely appreciate the feelings maybe of isolation. As a particularly vulnerable group, many may be asked to shield. I'm sure the last 12 months have been incredibly difficult. As a service, we've tried to be proactive in contact. The report states that we probably now have made about 100,000 contacts across all of our sheltered housing tenancies, some daily, some weekly, to help people feel connected still to their sheltered housing officer. I do appreciate maybe that doesn't necessarily help with their neighbours and that interaction they're missing. With regards to what we're going to do with the halls, really we are led by and have to follow the guidance which is available to us. And as soon as that means that we are able to do something safely and have the halls open, I'm sure that my colleagues in sheltered housing will do that. But certainly at the moment, that's not an option which is available to us. I know how disappointed my colleagues were back towards the autumn time when they were on the brink of reopening the doors to be told that they weren't able to do that because guidance had changed again. So it is a priority. I'm absolutely certain that they want to get them open, and as soon as they are safe to do so, then they will do.
Okay, thank you.
One quick one from Joy. Joy, you got your hand up, or is that an old
sorry.
hand?
Yeah, no. Lynn's just mentioned it actually. I was just going to pick up on something that Ian said a little while back. Just that we've got people that were lonely before this COVID, and are going to be, we're going to pick. We said years ago, loneliness kills, and I think we're going to get this problem again. I just wanted to know from Ian if we're doing anything to get in touch with. I know we've given our numbers out, and they can. We can talk to people, and I do with my residents, but I just wondered if there's any, because if people get a call, it means such a lot to them, Ian. I just wondered if what we're doing, because we've got 49 councillors, and I'm sure if each of us gave 2 calls to someone, it would help.
No one's more acutely aware of this than I am, and I haven't, unlike many directors of public health, been a huge proponent of lockdown at the kind of extreme end. I think we are balancing risks and benefits here, and I felt at times that the balance has tipped too far in the reduction of COVID risk at the expense of the exacerbation of a whole load of additional risks from lockdown. Having said all that, I think the new variant changed everything. So the new variant, which was so much more transmissible, then really we had to take the most stringent action. As Ryan has said, there's been quite comprehensive proactive engagement on the telephone in terms of our council officers. I would hope with the vaccination programme, and I think we need to wait for the second doses, but they've started over the last couple of weeks. So the cohort of residents that you speak about, Joe, and I absolutely get what you're saying, and I share your concern and their concern. But we'll start to get full protection quite soon. I think the other thing that I need to say is that this needs to be seen, and actually this links to the last point on the housing strategy. We are refreshing our Thurrock the Place strategy in terms of a really clear, what I want to do move forward is explain how the housing services integrate with all of the public health services and the adult social care services and the community development services and the libraries and the primary care transformation strategy, in terms of the infrastructure challenges that, again, I think you were rightly pointing out. We need an integrated strategy. We have a lot of strengths-based approach in Thurrock in terms of wider adult social care and community development, and the brilliant things like micro enterprises and local area coordinators. And I'm trying to find some more resource for the Council for Voluntary Services in terms of community development workers. So I think there's something about how we connect our older people and those who are lonely with all of that amazing community resource that Thurrock has on all of those assets and all of those community groups. And I think that approach really does pay dividends in terms of loneliness.
Ian, sorry, Chair, just to say that with the loneliness and what's going on, it's actually brought things back into Thurrock. It's probably done it in other areas, but it's actually brought back the milkman, which I find is really good, because that is something that helps. Years ago, you used to see someone's milk out and used to think they haven't taken it in, but it's bringing back some good community spirit. I think I've seen a lot of it. I know Lynn has as well. So
the other thing we've done really, really well in terms of the COVID epidemic is the Thurrock COVID-19 Community Action, TCCA. So again, a great partnership between the council, volunteers, hundreds and hundreds of volunteers, and all those third sector organisations to really reach out. And I think we stood that up within 3 weeks, and the feedback that we've had from that has been phenomenal in terms of how that's assisted people and helped them through the pandemic.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. I think there's some brilliant work going on out there. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. We've got is that Lynn Mansfield?
Yes, please. During the COVID, obviously evictions have been held back and all that. When that comes forward again and the evictions take place, or they're brought up to being talked about again, what happens to those people? Is that another strain on homelessness? Is it their own fault? Does it include mums and children? What happens? Please.
So if we're talking about evictions in the private sector, then almost certainly that will lead towards an increase in approaches towards our homelessness service. If we talk about our own stock, I mean, eviction is absolutely the very last thing that we would ever want to be doing. As a social housing provider, we want to make sure that people have safe, secure, stable homes for as long as is possible. Even when that does happen, we still try to provide support to avoid it as much as possible. We do understand the difficulties that people are experiencing at the moment. I'll talk more about the private sector. Yes, they probably would approach our homelessness service, and that would see an increase.
And does that include children as well? Are they out as well until they've found, or do they get help to be housed? That's what I want. You can't put children on the street.
No.
So whether they're private or not.
So when a person or a family or a household approaches the service, an assessment of their situation is undertaken. We will try and prevent them being homeless if we can, relieve their homelessness if that's possible. There are certain people that we would owe a duty to find temporary accommodation at least. Households with children tend to be one of those as well. But we will provide support. I'm sure we wouldn't want to see anyone, certainly not families, on the street like that.
Yeah, and it's important to note, Lynn, that even if the council, even if they are intentionally homeless, if they've got children, then those families will be provided temporary accommodation to start with until a decision's made. And then if the council doesn't have a full duty, they'll be passed to Children's Services, who will have a duty to house. So these children are not on the street, okay?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So I think we'll call time on that. Can we note that report? All good? Brilliant.
Agreed.
And we'll go to the work programme. Has anyone got any comments on the work programme?
No.
Me.
Let's go for it, Lynn.
Luke, could I suggest that we have a damp and mould report come forward, please?
See, I'm confused because I assumed that there was a big statement that we were going to get a big report on this, weren't we? And
Well, I expected that, and then when I see my response to the question that I was going to ask Councillor Johnson, and it said that it's only for the 3 blocks of flats in Blackshots. Now, there is a massive damp and mould problem again. I know there is every winter, but I'm aware that it's a growing problem, and we haven't had one of these reports for about 5 years.
No,
so
I agree.
I think that we do need to have a stock survey damp and mould review, and I think that we need to come up with a way of tackling it. There was one done in 2015, and as far as I'm aware, I've read it and I can't see that any of it was action. So I think we need to have a damp and mould report come forward, please.
I do agree, because I was confused because Councillor Johnson had publicly requested it, and then we had a contradictory answer from the previous assistant director about whether it was coming or not.
Well,
So
his answer to me was it's only the 3 blocks of flats.
yeah, so I would like to see something on damp and mould. I agree with Councillor Worrell. If we could put that on, that would be fantastic, and get that sorted as soon as possible.
That's my only one, thank you.
That's fine. So are we happy to close the meeting at this point and note that and close the meeting?
Yeah. See you all the other side.
Can I just say to Ian, can I borrow you for 1 minute? And Lucy, can you tell me when the recording stops? Because I need to ask Ian something very quickly.
Sure, no problem.